Hey guys, so what we're going to do today is we are going to be reading a poem called Tableau. It is written by County Cullen, but before we dive into the poem and start to analyze it and look at its meaning, I want to just give you guys a quick background on County Cullen, okay? So, sorry about that, guys. All right, here we go. So, County Cullen. County Cullen was a famous American poet, playwright, and author. He was born May 30th, 1903. He died 42 and a half years later on January 9th, 1946. It's unknown as to where he was actually born, although many historians speculate that he might have been born in Louisville or some part of Kentucky, maybe Baltimore, Maryland, or even New York City. However, like I said, they're uncertain as to his exact starting place. However, both his parents had passed away, and so they believe that he was raised by his grandmother, who eventually in his teenage years had passed away as well. And that was when he was taken in by Carolyn Bell and Reverend Frederick A. Cullen in Harlem, New York. So they ended up adopting him. And during his teenage years, he actually was very active in school. He loved poetry, would participate in competitions. And during this time, it was perfect because he was growing up during the Harlem Renaissance, which, as you guys know, hopefully have learned in social studies, and I know we've talked about it here and there during English class. It was basically like this booming time for African American culture, particularly music and literature. So he then went to NYU. After NYU, then went to Harvard University, where he acquired a master's degree. And then in 1928, he married Yolande Du Bois, who was the daughter of W.E.B. Du Bois. Their marriage and their wedding was like the party of the year. If you guys are familiar with W.E.B. Du Bois, he was a famous activist for African Americans. And so when they got married, it was like this huge, extravagant thing. However, it didn't work out, and they were divorced 2 years later. And he ended up dying at the age of 42 due to a medical condition. So just a little bit of background. He was a very knowledgeable person and had, great interest in literature and writing and poetry. So he oftentimes focused on a lot of themes and experiences that African Americans were facing. And that's where a lot of his inspiration for his writing actually came from. So you guys participated in the assignment, hopefully before you're watching this, and that required you to look at 5 different terms. Those words were tableau, splendor, sable, indignant, and unison. And so those terms are located right here as their definitions are also present, because these are words that are going to pop up in our poem. So it's important for you guys to know them because it'll help make the poem make more sense. So here we go. Tableau. Locked arm in arm, they cross the way, the black boy and the white, the golden splendor of the day, the sable pride of night. From lowered blinds the dark folk stare, and hear the fair folk talk, indignant that these two should dare in unison to walk. Oblivious to look and word, they pass and see no wonder that lightning brilliant as a sword should blaze the path of thunder. So when we look at this poem, first impressions, this would be the point where I would ask you guys, what are your thoughts? What's the first thing that stands out to you guys? So obviously the vocab words probably stood out, and hopefully that helped a little bit. And the way in which I broke it down is that each stanza, so if you guys recall, a stanza is kind of like a paragraph, but in poetry form. And so each stanza is broken down. So we have 4 lines, 4 lines, 4 lines, making our poem a total of 12. And the colors are set there to distinguish 3 different key points of this poem. So we're setting the stage in this red section. All right, we're setting the stage and we're presenting you with that image or that tableau. So that image that's being presented, if you guys, were listening, I'm sure you are, or you're looking at this, is this image of a black boy and a white boy during, walking locked arm in arm. So they have their arms kind of looped together and they are walking side by side. So this is the image that you're supposed to be picturing as the reader. But then we move to the next stanza. And when we get to this stanza, this is where we see that uncomfortable feeling of people as they're watching this scene happen. So from the lowered blinds, the dark folk stare. So think about if you were ever trying to spy on someone outside your window and you have blinds, you kind of poke them up and then you're looking out those blinds. That's kind of what you're picturing. So there's people that are kind of spying on them. Then there's people who, the fair folk, are talking about them, right? The white folk are talking about them. And then they're indignant, right? They're feeling that this is unjust, this is inappropriate, that these two should be walking side by side or simultaneously next to each other. Okay, so we see that injustice right here, how people are reacting to this image of two people who are different but much like the same walking together. And then it jumps back to the third stanza, and it gives us this image of what's going on with the black boy and the white boy mentioned in stanza 1. It's that oblivious to look and word, they pass and see no wonder. So when we look at these two characters, we'll call them in our poem, they're oblivious to what's happening. They don't care. They're not bothered by it. And they see no wonder that lightning brilliant as a sword should blaze the path of thunder. Okay, so it wraps it up nicely that there's two people in this. Granted, the dark folk are staring from behind their blinds, and the white folk or the fair folk are talking behind their backs about this, but they don't see that as an issue. Our black boy and white boy from the first stanza don't see this as an issue. So what's the point of the poem? Obviously, we know the who. It's the black boy, it's the white boy, the dark folk, and the fair folk. And what's happening? Two boys who should not be walking together based on societal expectations are walking arm in arm, showing unity, acceptance, and most likely some sort of friendship. And so when was this published? It was actually published in 1925 during the Harlem Renaissance, a time when there was a blooming of African American culture and acceptance in Harlem. So that injustice was still present, and it only gets worse as time goes on again. And so the why, and I'm leaving this up to you, and I'm going to post a question in a Google form. Why on earth would County Cullen write this poem? What is the purpose of those three different stanzas? What is the purpose of showing, well, I'm not going to say that. I was about to tell you part of the answer. So why did County Cullen decide to set up this stage, to give us this tableau or this image? Why did he do it? What is the point of demonstrating this? Okay, guys, so hopefully this helps, this little breakdown. And like I said, I'm going to post the question for you guys to follow up with. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm also going to post this slideshow for you. All right, guys, talk to you later.